Hey.
Is it work? I don't see the stream.
Hello.
We're live now. Hi, I'm Barack Obama.
Hello.
She is also Barack Obama.
Yes.
Yeah, John Bolton couldn't make it, but I mean, of course, Pac-Man, or as he's known in this server, Peter Bolton. Hi, I'm Barack Obama. I mean, yeah, that's me and you, by the way. You heard that, right?
Progress.
We're getting, yeah. It's live. We're live, yes. Dip Dap figured it out, sorta. Can you guys hear Dip Dap, by the way? That's an important thing.
That's always a good start.
Hold on.
Now they can hear me. I just changed my mic. Alright. I didn't know that because it didn't have to do that last time. Hey.
No, they can't hear you.
Now they can, I think. I fixed it.
It's just every time, isn't
Every
it?
time there's always something wrong when I host because I'm not the one who normally does this.
Hey, in a few years you'll have it down.
Yeah, in a few years, maybe. Decades. But the thing now says I am talking, so it is okay. So
Nice.
tonight we're talking about Syria, Chile, Lebanon, and whatever the fuck else we want to talk about.
Yeah, really.
So since Syria is the first in the name, and Theo is our most Syria understander.
How did that become the Syrian war correspondent? No, anyway. A lot of shit has happened in the last week. So I don't even remember when the truce was. Basically, the Turks started losing. The Turks then went to basically talk to the American president, and Trump then brokered a quote-unquote ceasefire. It's basically just a surrender to the Turks, and then the Turks tried to prevent the Kurds from following the agreement, so they could shoot at them again. Then earlier this week, the Russians came in and were like, "Hey, let's commit genocide," and basically are now assisting the Turks with their military operations in Syria. It's the whole thing. It's a whole garbage thing, and it's tiring.
When you help a country
Yes.
commit genocide, Russian style.
You know, I stand by what I said last stream. That is, Turkish state must be destroyed.
Yeah, it's, yes.
Because aside from the Saudis, maybe, no country is as explicitly carrying out a genocide at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it wouldn't send Europe literally bombing them, the Turks would just round them all up and shoot them, which is what they've started doing in the places that they have no obligation of protecting, mainly the parts of Syria they've invaded.
Mm-hmm.
The people that they didn't displace, they shot, humiliated. I've heard some reports of mass rapes by the FSA,
Ooh.
where they rounded up, like, where they went into villages, rounded up all the women, and literally divided them up among themselves.
Hasn't the FSA worked with ISIS before?
They're literally jihadists.
Yeah,
Like, they're literally
I know
jihadists,
they're
yeah.
jihadists, but I mean, haven't
Yeah,
they?
they used to work with the ISIS, but then the Turks started sending them weapons, and that was the more lucrative deal to go with.
The Turks support jihadis. I mean, it's nothing new, but God,
Yeah,
Turkey.
it's
Ooh, PKK, please come through. Please come through.
I mean, they're sitting in the mountains and shooting things. It's just we don't have a lot of information about what the fuck's going on because Turkey shut down the internet.
Already,
Like in the middle of
Yeah.
Turkey.
access.
Yeah, like, which it's illegal. That's a breach of human rights. Um,
I mean,
like, no, it is.
I know,
It's
but I'm saying
yeah,
Turkey doesn't care. They've already committed crimes against humanity.
yeah, yeah. Well, right. So internationally, the Americans have, well, abandoned their allies, and they're just sort of being like, "Oh yeah, we were gonna protect the oil fields in the south." Like, of course you are, you fucking. Um, no, but what ended up, well, no, there are two powers that are still incredibly angry, and that is the Germans and the French. Now, the Germans have, you know the history of the German nation, I would assume, in that regard. And for the modern German Republic, genocide doesn't go over well, and they're usually the first to condemn it, which is why
Uh,
they have been fairly avid opponents of the Turks being in NATO for decades.
only bro in the chat. Doesn't a decent amount of ISIS's AK-47s come from China? I don't know that,
I don't know about that.
but I
don't
know a lot of their cars are from the U.S.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I
Possibly.
haven't looked into it.
Yeah. Oh, Chinese AKs.
Chinese.
Honestly, it's probably just because they're cheap to get, and they're able to find them.
Yeah. Well, the Chinese supported like East African like terror groups with them, and a lot of them later joined like a lot of the fucking weapons later fell into the hands of the Somali jihadists.
We know that they have given ISIS. No, I don't think they have. I don't think we know. But we know that ISIS uses weapons from all over the world and history, basically.
Yeah. No, but what I was saying is that Germans are very angry. They want Turkey out of NATO like yesterday. and the French are angry because the shelling that happened, like the shelling of Kobani, where the Turkish bombed shelled an outpost of the international coalition. 3 French servicemen were wounded, and one of them died
Yeah.
of their injuries. So they lost a man to what the Turks are doing. So they're angry. Germans are angry. And that Germans have wanted to break away from NATO and try to grab the French Benelux and the whole Italy, the whole bunch of people, and form a fucking um European defense pact. Been trying to get that ball rolling for a few decades now, which I would probably cool down the world situation a little. I mean, the Brits wouldn't leave with the Germans, but everyone else would. So yeah.
Yeah, so Turkey has committed breaches of human rights in their own country, war crimes, and oh hey, Zordon, $10.
Hey.
Thanks, my guy.
Yo. What were you saying?
They've breached human rights in their own country. They've committed war crimes, and they've committed crimes against humanity. If only I could take fucking Erdogan to the Hague myself. Because
This is why we must become the Hague.
That were Barack Obama. Like a little ago.
Yeah.
Detroit, Barack Obama. Wait, no. I redact that statement. Forget it.
I want a divorce.
That's fair.
I love you though. Anyway, carry on.
I love you too.
Okay, carry on.
Apparently, Turkey is telling Donald Trump not to meet with a Kurdish force leader. They're saying the U.S. does not to call off any plans to meet with Mazmol Abdi, one of the commander-in-chief of the SDF. This is from NPR. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu. I don't know any Turkish. Our allies' dialogue with a terrorist wanted with a red notice is unacceptable. So yes, they are again calling SDF forces terrorists.
Oh, that reminds me. Macron made a statement a few days ago where he was very coyly. He said, "We appreciate Turkey's enthusiasm in the war on terror, but the SDF is not a terrorist organization."
Yeah. Another person said, "This is their director of communications, Fahrettin Al-Kun, quote, he was wanted for multiple terror attacks targeting the Turkish security forces, a NATO army, as well as civilians," end quote. I don't think that the SDF has done that. The only perceivable crime that the
what you have to understand when the Turks are talking about the SDF is that they use them synonymously with the PKK. Synonymously, so they use them interchangeably.
They use the ethnic group with synonymous with an organization.
Yeah,
which is kind of. Another thing I've noticed is the only crime that the SDF has committed, war crime based, is a good one. Yeah. And by that I mean the mass execution of ISIS terrorists.
Yeah, and that was under the fucking watch of the international coalition. No one complained.
And it was good.
I mean, the Turks complained, but
I wonder why. I wonder
You know-
why.
It's almost like they're having ICE help them out.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can you be nicer to these jihadists?
Mm-hmm.
As if that's not an incredibly strange thing to say. I mean, not that they realize that, but that's besides the point.
And the U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has said the reason the U.S. will not completely pull out is, quote, the United States will maintain a reduced presence in Syria to deny ISIS access to oil revenue as we reposition for the next phase of the defeat ISIS campaign, end quote. So, the only reason that we have this. What the fuck is this fucking thing that Trump said on Twitter? Quote, perhaps it is time for the Kurds to start heading to the oil region, exclamation point, end quote. What?
What?
What the fuck?
Huh?
I don't even understand what the fuck he means by that.
He's saying
Right.
he's saying the Kurds should just go to the oil region and protect from ISIS.
Right. I know this is a tired thing that you hear from shit libs a lot, but I'm starting to seriously suspect that Trump has some dementia issues. Because that is not a
had dementia, and I see the correlation.
that is not a coherent sentence someone makes when they're not confused. That's a sentence I bring out when I'm spacing out, staring ahead, and not thinking about what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, my fucking grandmother had
That's what you're
Alzheimer's.
saying, you have dementia.
This makes less sense than the things my grandmother said when she had Alzheimer's.
No, but I have short-term memory problems due to depression, so
Fair, so do I. But yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Alright. Let me know how that is, Zordon. I just saw the message saying that that I should move it up. Let me know if I should turn it up more. The reason is I'm playing with no audio settings at the moment. Let's see some other shit. Syria's state-run news agency, SANA, reports that, quote, forces affiliated to the Turkish occupation and its mercenaries, end quote, used artillery shells and mortars to attack the towns of Kalzalia and Tal Alaban in the Tal Tamer region in northwestern Syria.
yeah. Now, what you have to remember about this, what I find very strange, is that these decisions have seemingly been made, around the Russian ally Assad, because, well, I don't know, because Assad is still mad because the Turks are invading Syria, but I don't know.
Yeah, and remember, Trump deems this a permanent ceasefire with 1,000 quotation marks around that. Holy shit. I remember that there was a U.S., I think, representative or senator that said, "God forgive us." In relation
It was
to what?
it was a Republican representative.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
God help us. God forgive us. Even the Republican Party.
Oh, this was bipartisan. Everyone, the vote in the House to hold on, bring him to fucking reverse the decision to pull out of Syria. Hold on a minute.
What Trump did was he set the Syrian house on fire by saying we're going to pull out. And Turkey is the fire, and then he put most of the fire out by saying, oh no, he called the fire department, didn't put any of the fucking fire out, by saying, I made a ceasefire, guys.
Yeah, so the House voted 354 to 60 to oppose the decision to end certain US efforts to prevent Turkish military operations in the Syrian forces to northeast Syria. That's a constitutional majority.
And then didn't he get pissy and think that...
Basically what happened is that the House told Trump no, and the Senate would have also told him no. So he threw a hissy fit, threw a tantrum, and was like, well, then I'll just hand it to the Turks. That's gonna save our prestige.
Yeah,
Didn't, but he doesn't care about, he doesn't even care about, the United States' foreign affairs. He's using it for literally himself. He doesn't give a shit if the US comes out of it unscathed, because the US just alienated a shit ton of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like a shit ton.
Oh, yeah.
Also something we got to talk about later on is the protests in Japan, specifically the ones in Shinjuku.
Oh, yes, we should bring that up.
Yeah. So Syria's still on fire, and so what Trump did is the world had started to put out this fire, and he's like, I'm gonna help. And he takes out a gas canister and pours gasoline over the fucking embers. When the fucking, fire flares back up, he's like, well, he calls the fire department, shoots one of the firemen, and then goes, well, didn't I do a great job?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is quite literally what he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all that we can say, perhaps, about Turkey for this week. So let's move on to the next piece on the budget, unless anyone else has anything to say.
No.
Okay, my memory issues are fucking horrible at the minute, so forgive me if we did go over this, but did we talk about Russia kind of teaming up with Turkey and how they're planning kind of... Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
I mentioned it in the beginning.
All right.
Yeah, look, I'm really dumb. I can't remember things.
Next, Chile. All right, Chile is fucking... Oh my god. So we have to talk about, yes, the metro fare is the tipping point. But people don't burn an energy building because of a 4-cent USD metro fare increase.
You're cutting out a bit, did that for us.
How's this now? Better?
No, you're cutting out as in internet connection things.
Oh, hold on, let me...
It's might be gone. I'm not. Yeah, it might be gone. Yeah, I think so.
All right. As I said, people don't riot because of a 4-cent increase. There's a lot more to the thing that is causing Chile's riots right now.
Oh yeah. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say.
Yeah, I have a picture that I got from Twitter, and I don't remember the source, so forgive me. But what they said was, under all this is poor public health care, mental health problems, poor public schooling, pensions that are terrible, miserable salaries, precarious jobs, politicians getting outrageous benefits, student debt, unfair justice system, collusion, and water privatization.
Yep, Chile is the only country in the world where that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's quite true. Aren't there a few other places?
Yeah, but the Chileans literally got rid of their national water supply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
They privatized the whole thing, which...
Lovely.
Guess how that went?
Terrible.
I'll tell you how that went. All the water is now only running into the rich districts of cities. Because that's where the money is.
And when the Chileans began to do anything about their problems by protesting and then eventually having violent protests,
Yes, the police started. Yeah, the government in particular, also the police started violently assaulting people, setting public transport on fire, and doing all sorts of other horrible shit.
It wasn't just the police; it was also the military, like the actual military.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been kidnapping people off the streets.
They have
yeah.
shot and killed protesters. I get a lot of my information on Chile right now from a Twitter user, Baronessa 1980. She's in Chile, in Santiago, and I just see a lot of stuff about how. Let me get Twitter to translate this for me. In Monjitas, with Jose Miguel de la Barra Carabineros, there is a shooting by the police or military. I can't tell based on uniform.
Can you send it to me? I can probably identify it.
It looks more like a police officer because they have a helmet, but I don't know how militarized the Chilean police are.
Right. Again, if you send it to me, I can probably identify it.
I'm putting it in VC.
Right. Well, wait a minute.
The image of Allende is becoming very popular with these protests. And I've seen people use the term, I think it's Nuevo Pinochet, so New Pinochet.
Right. Those are definitely Chilean army carriers, but the Chilean army doesn't use shotguns. I'm not sure.
Apparently the Piñera government has tried to remove the head of laboratories of the Legal Medical Service after they reported that there were bodies found in supermarkets.
Ah.
Oh, wonderful.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am so happy.
A lot of the graffiti that has been put up has explicit leftist characteristics.
Yep. Care to name some?
By that I mean it's mostly just symbols.
Right.
So the A, the hammer and sickle, etc.
Right.
One of them, I think, said, "We are proletarians." I don't know how to say it in Spanish, but yeah, that's what it said. I remember correctly. Just Chile is fucking going down because the Chilean government is firing live bullets. Think of, even fucking China didn't go in this fast.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, what you're looking at there is... So what you sent, that is a video of Chilean Marine Corps Special Forces.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Those guys are psychopaths. Like, we call the U.S. Marines psychopaths. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Marines pale in comparison to these guys.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like, they are literal psychopaths.
Yeah, it seems that with this, like, it's taken the Hong Kong police... It's been 4 months now, and things are only starting... Like, didn't get violent for a while. It took Chile, less than a week.
Yeah, you're cutting out again, by the way.
Let's see. How about now?
Well, we won't know until in a minute.
Just basically that it took Chile less than a week to get violent. It took Hong Kong at least a month or two to get majorly violent, and they're still not actively shooting people with live rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
China, I'm surprised by the restraint of the Chinese. I was thinking they were going to send in the PLA pretty fast. They haven't.
The thing is, this is again, this isn't something where the fucking this is where the public is looking. They were looking at Tiananmen Square too, but this would be an actual military campaign, and you can't really keep that up,
right,
without getting slapped with sanctions from the whole world.
Yeah. Another thing is that the U.S. government is not going to look at Chile because they're not Venezuela.
They're not going to look at Chile because, well, who caused this spiral that led to this new quasi-fascist Chilean government?
Yeah, no, we have
I'll tell you who. I'll tell you who. It's the CIA. When they were
the first 9/11.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
September 11th, 1973.
Yep.
It was also a Tuesday, fun fact. So was 9/11 2001.
History repeats itself.
Remember, kids, never go out on a 9/11 that's on a Tuesday. Bad things happen.
Yeah.
Oh, good things if you're a jihadist or a fascist. Or a fascist jihadist. All jihadists are fascists, I rescind that statement.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Trying to find more shit that's going on.
If we can't find anything, we can talk about Lebanon.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at see where this place is. I'm seeing something from a place. Yeah, okay, let's move on to Lebanon. So Lebanon is also popping off. I think Zizek recently talked about how the world is starting to catch fire.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah. You know that song, I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, fuck that. I'm all about setting the world on fire. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I want to set the world on fire now. Set it on fire fucking yesterday.
Yes, well.
So, I guess the first thing is Lebanese protesters have occupied the unfinished and abandoned theater, The Egg, in downtown Beirut, and are having free lectures and open discussions. And ooh boy, one of the names of these lectures is Capitalism in Crisis. Here we go, fellas. I'm all for this. Oh, yeah, there's also protests in Japan for Only Bro.
Yeah.
Yes, we should definitely talk about Japan.
Next week we should honestly organize a protest episode because that would be interesting.
Oh yeah, there's just so much going on now.
Gonna call it Boogaloo Beatdown. That's what we're gonna call it.
Oh yeah. It's wishful thinking that I'm hoping that Lebanon will form workers' councils of some sort.
That would be really cool.
It'd be based. Some protesters were also apparently shouting sexist and homophobic protest chants, and they were countered with other protest chants of calling the words they were calling the government not insults.
Interesting. What do you make of that?
That hopefully these are very progressive protesters for the most part.
Yeah.
And they seem to be drowned out by such... The conservative protesters were drowned out by such insults as female is not an insult, pussy is not an insult.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have to say about that. I'm sorry.
So please form workers' councils. All of you in Lebanon, I will learn Arabic and I will learn Lebanese Arabic.
Yeah.
Just a thing that we have to remember. We pressed play. Things are going down. There's no reason to be a complete pessimist nowadays because things are happening. Recession is coming.
Yeah, and actual response this time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's gonna be. I don't think that even in places like the US and all, when it really hits us, I don't think people are gonna just stay quiet about it. People are getting sick.
Like,
people are getting fucking sick of this. They're losing patience, and they're starting to realize that the options we're being presented with are not a fucking solution.
Yeah, in the past few months, there has been more industrial action in the United States than there has been in the past.
Oh my god, yes.
80 years now.
Now, do you guys all remember the Ford strikes and all that we were talking about that were happening? Those are still going on, by the way. There just hasn't been much news about it. Ah, yes.
The unbiased media, of course, because they're very unbiased trademark. Yeah. Who would pay them?
Who would pay the media? Who? No one would do that.
Probably people with money to pay them.
Also, those of you with social media out there, especially if any of you have like a kind of large account, maybe like spread some info about that.
Mm-hmm.
Try to get the ball rolling on that. Let people know what's going on, because
Cody,
news agencies and stuff cannot be trusted.
Cody in the chat. No, the dialectic, it's going too fast.
Well, you should have installed brakes. Now it's too late, big boy. Tried to do like a sort of Batman villain sort of voice there. Sorry.
Also, shout out to Prager Bussy in the chat, because that is a beautiful and cursed name. Like, oh god, I think I have cancer, and I love it.
That's a quote. Hold on.
Damn it.
I guess since tonight is a really riffy episode, we can talk about Japan if any of you know enough about it.
I haven't, it's not an information lockdown, but a lot of people are talking about it.
We can do cursory stuff.
I've been trying to look for a few things.
Wait, summon Pac-Man! You get this fucking call right now, you piece of shit! Get in here now!
Why are you not here?
Get here now!
You son of a bitch! We're just a skeleton crew. You think we can do this all? I mean, barely. Match acceleration. Yes, we've summoned you. Now get
in here.
Get in the fucking mech, Shinji. Get in.
Get in
here. I will break
You're in the chat. You fuck.
Get in here, or I will break your collarbones.
Oh my god.
I am here, you fucking...
Alright, Pac-Man, get the fuck in this call.
Alright. Everyone who has guns, fire them at Australia or whatever. I don't know, that didn't have to make sense. I don't have to make sense.
Alright,
I'm well...
Alright, wait one. Alright, so, So as we're waiting, I guess, anything you want to touch on really fast?
Yeah, so there's been a coup ongoing in the Social Democratic Party in Austria. Left-wing elements are trying to seize control of the party. In their manifestos, they have mentioned class struggle and
Oh.
Oh
going
my
back
god.
to the roots. And they're talking the Marxist roots. So that's very interesting.
Morning!
Hello.
Someone just
morning,
woke up.
Mr. Bolton.
We're
I
talking
am
about...
here.
We're through most things, but we were starting to talk about the riots in Japan, because there were
Yes.
Alright,
some
Mr.
pretty...
Weedman, you know about this shit, I'm sure.
Oh, wait a minute. I need to get up to date. Jesus Christ. Whoa. So, hi everyone. I just woke up.
When did you go to bed?
3 a.m.
Well, that explains it.
I set the alarm and then I thought, skeleton crew, we don't know what's going on. No one was in the Vax chat, and I was like, and then I rolled over, went back to sleep, and then I saw you guys were streaming, and I'm like, oh shit. So I got right here.
Yes, well, we were talking about Syria and how that turned into a fucking shit show. Do you have anything to say about that for a moment?
My policy on Syria is the same policy I have on Israel. It's the same policy I have at the time. Press the button, let atoms glow, divide us. That will solve our issues. Hopefully.
I'm sure they will, but specifically what we're talking about now is that there have been, for a few weeks now, there have been riots ongoing in Japan. Very, very large ones in Shinjuku. And they were waving around Antifa flags and fucking hammers and sickles and shit.
Shinjuku Prefecture is
and
known
the
to be a
demands,
bit of a...
yeah, that they had pretty concise demands. Well, from what I could actually find of them, a lot of them were not translated, sadly. But the ones that I could see is that they demand the immediate resignation of Shinzo Abe's government, and demand that hold on, some decision that the Japanese government has reached that I can't make out what exactly they mean to be immediately reversed, and they demand for they're calling the current government of Japan a fascist quasi-dictatorship, which they are. Fun fact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Japanese government is kind of
Bigger.
Mr.
Yeah,
Abe.
Japan has mastered the art of silently being on fire.
Mr.
Anyway, what were you
Abe
saying,
has
Peter?
been having a bit of a time with the whole "oh no birth rates, oh no" thing because Nation.
Well, the biggest issue for Japanese politics right now is the fact that most of the senior cabinet and most of the, including Shinzo Abe himself, are all members of Nippon Kaigi, which is I should probably give a brief explanation as to who Nippon Kaigi actually are.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right. Okay, so we have the Tea Party in the United States, who are basically like, have any of you guys played BioShock Infinite?
No.
I have
I
not.
don't really play games.
But I am familiar with the Tea Party. My parents were quite involved back in the heyday. They kept going to the protests. Oh, and
Okay.
Apparently my grandma even got to shake hands with John McCain or something.
Okay,
They
now...
both did.
Okay, so BioShock Infinite is a good example of the Tea Party taken to its extreme, where the Constitution of the United States, the Founding Fathers, and the idea of the United States as a whole is taken to a religious extent. I would say to
one
the
thing.
Tea Party,
Only Bro in the chat's
Yep.
asking, how hasn't Abe been in power for 16 years plus?
Shinzo
I believe
Abe
so.
is if he makes it through his complete term now, as in if he stays in power past November 27th, he is the longest serving Japanese head of state, as in Japanese head of government since Hideki Tojo. As in like Hideki Tojo's party, because technically, all right. So when the military junta took control of Japan in the 1930s, and it held power all the way until the collapse of Japan in the Second World War, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had the massive unrest. They went in like before the invasion of China. The Japanese government went through about 15 different prime ministers in the space of 6 months. A couple of them were assassinated. A couple of them were murdered. And so eventually the military took control. And so basically the democratic process in Japan, or what there was of it, and the political process of Japan was divided not between the liberals, the communists, and the conservatives. The entire political struggle of Japan was determined between the army and the navy. So make of that what you will.
Mhm.
The reason I bring up the Tea Party is because the Tea Party and for popular reference, Bioshock Infinite is basically, I would say, the closest thing to a religious cult around the U.S. Constitution and around the U.S. Idea, if you like.
Right.
And they are
yes.
hyper-conservative. They're hyper-conservative, and they like all neo-fash. They have this constant idea of the past, and the past was better, and America's standing in the world is degenerated. Now, imagine if the Tea Party was not actually a political party itself, but a sort of social club. And imagine that Tea Party, every major member of government was a member. That's what Nippon Kaigi is. Nippon Kaigi is an ultra-nationalist, far-right group who believe in the restoration of Imperial Japan. Japan's rearmament, ostensibly against the North Korean and Chinese threats, with Trump's blessing, of course, because Trump actually went to the opening of their new ships. Japan's rearmament is ostensibly to counter threats in the South Pacific, but Nippon Kaigi's primary goal is the amendment of the Constitution and the removal of Article 9. And what that would mean is that the Japanese Self-Defense Force would be abolished, and it would be the re-establishment of the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy. And the Emperor would be returned to his official head of state status.
Yeah, they're a fascist interest group.
Yeah.
So, like, fascists, I would describe them as a fascist special interest group. That's probably a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're like
I would like to
a big tent coalition, and they talk about, like, their least right-wing or, like, center-right, and then they go all the way to, like, ultra-nationalist fucking wackos.
I would say, as scary as it sounds for me to say this, I would say they aren't actually fascists, if that makes sense.
They're like neocons?
I suppose you would. The best way to describe them would be radical monarchists. I would say, because the core of their ideology is the return of the emperor as head of state.
Yeah, but we've also determined after the Second World War that we should consider that a distinction without a difference.
I would say so. But at the same time, I think Japan's culture is
There's
so
an
radically
ideological,
different.
yeah. There's definitely an ideological difference, but it's like, yeah, there's an ideological difference between Phalangism and, say, Hitlerism.
I would say
They're both still pretty much equally bad.
Yeah, I would say that I would differentiate them between fascists by saying that they're not so much fascists, because I don't in a technical sense, they are radical imperialists.
All right.
It's not so much ethno-state and so on. It's more returning Japan to its former glory, if that makes sense.
Okay. Pac-Man, I found the stated goals of Nippon Kaigi.
Nippon Kaigi stated goals. Yes.
Nippon Kaigi. The first one, a beautiful traditional society, so sovereignty for Japan's future. And its description is fostering a sense of Japanese unity and social stability based upon the imperial household and shared history, culture, and traditions of the Japanese people.
Yeah.
2.
Now that's, as I said, that's their radical conservatism approach. Like traditional Japanese values.
Think of next. 2. A new constitution appropriate for the new era. Restoring national defense rights, rectifying the unbalance of rights and obligations, strengthening the emphasis on the family system, and loosening the separation of religion and state.
Yeah, basically Shinto state now.
Wait. Are they trying to do what like pre end of war era did with the emperor, where he's like the godhead?
Yes.
Oh my fucking god. Okay, so
they're talking about the restoration
back before the rush hour of the gods that caused shit like
They're talking about restoration of the Showa period of Japan. So they're talking essentially they want to return the emperor's role to that of Emperor Hirohito. Essentially.
Number 3 is politics that protect the state's reputation and the people's lives. Addressing the loss of public interest in politics and government by taking a more aggressive stance in historical debates and crisis management.
Historical revisionism.
Yes.
That banning the Communist Party, as they've been trying to do for, 7 years now?
Mm-hmm. They want to ban the JCP. The JCP are the biggest opponents of Nippon Kaigi. What a shock. The
only real opponents, if you think about it.
Yeah. Japan is the largest communist party in the developed world. Fun fact. That's of course because we don't count the Chinese Communist Party. Damn on the Dengus half hour has begun, ladies and gentlemen.
They never were. The only one that could be out of all the Chinese Communist Party founders, the only one I would consider a respectable Marxist is Chen Duxiu.
Yeah.
And also he was the closest thing you can get to a Chinese trot. He was pretty good though.
I mean, I'd go further and say, Maoism's pretty based, but yeah, the Dengists. Well, everyone in this channel knows our stance on Dengists. Yeah. Moving on.
The fourth one is, now this one's a bit sus. Creating education that fosters a sense of Japanese identity. And it says, addressing various problems arising in the Japanese educational system, bullying, prostitution, etc., and instituting respect for the national flag and anthem, and for national history, culture, and traditions, in the process abandoning gender-free education and critical views of Japanese history.
That is especially a big jab because teachers' unions are teachers are like the big haven of the communist movement in Japan. Mm-hmm.
And even then the as we all know, during the 1940s and 50s, during the women's liberation movement and the advance of feminism, we know that teaching went from a primarily male-dominated role to a primarily female-dominated role. And I would say that their objective here is to return traditional values to Japan. Now, it's no different, what they're doing here is no different from the American policy of saying the Pledge of Allegiance every morning in terms of the national anthem and all that sort of shit. Mm-hmm. And American students are only taught American history in American high schools, as far as I'm aware, from what I've heard from everybody.
Mostly, yes. For the most part.
Yeah.
We do.
Okay, I can lay that out real quick, because it's very simple.
It'll be different in different
we get
states.
taught, at least in Arizona, the international sort of thing, because there was U.S. history, which was literally just Civil War,
White guy
a
highlight
few
reel.
other key things. Yeah, pretty much. But the world history sort of coursework was, very basic, kind of dull run over of, ancient civilizations in various places. The big stuff, Mesopotamia, very ancient China, that sort of thing. Then it skips forward to the Renaissance and talks about the Renaissance was the Renaissance for like 2 months. And then after that, it's World War II, but a very watered down attempt at removing the politics from the question. I mean, they'll mention that, Hitler killed the Jews, but that's
it.
There's no more detail than that. You can't know more than that.
They don't
think about it. Just
Roma. They don't mention the other people they killed as well, or like how they mass imprisoned communists, gay people. They don't talk about that.
They do not talk about that at all. They mention 6 million Jews dead and millions of other people that they will never specify and are kind of just a footnote in a history book.
Because it's a lot of Russians. Moving on.
Then they briefly go over the civil rights movement in a very disgusting way. By basically just being like, well, Martin Luther King said he had a dream, and bam, we ended racism, boys. That's that, and then it talks a little bit about George W. Bush, and that it usually ends there. You're lucky if the textbooks are, recent enough to know who George Bush is.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks sat on the bus.
Yeah, my high school textbooks for history were published in like 2004.
Yeah. Here's a good one.
Now here's the thing: in Alabama, for history, we are taught Greece, Rome, Renaissance, Western Europe, and then Italy. 1450 Europe, and then the Americas until the establishment of America. Then brief highlight reel of America up until about 1850. Then we talk about the Civil War and slavery. And then we talk about then we focus on the Reconstruction era, because I'm in a area that was part of the Reconstruction after the end of the Civil War, and we act as if the Northerners were taking advantage of Southern people for 30 years.
Which they were.
Yeah, which.
Look, I could go on. Like, the American Civil War is fascinating in that regard, but I could go on about the clash of a feudal society versus an industrialized society for ages.
And then,
always fun.
Yeah, and then we get into the World War One, brief. World War II, we're the heroes, yay, 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 we saved the Jews. We don't mention how gay people still had to serve out their sentences post-war because they were still not decriminalized. And then we talk about civil rights movement, meaning Martin Luther King did everything because he was peaceful and nice and didn't do anything illegal, and guys, it's okay to protest things as long as you aren't a nuisance. We don't talk about Malcolm X. We say he was we do. We say he was a radical. Then we talk about like the president and what they did to stop wars and terrorists, and that's it.
Yeah, cult of personality.
Now now we talked about the history bit on Nippon Kaigi. The next one is contributing to world peace by strengthening national security, strengthening Japanese defense power in order to counterbalance China, North Korea, and other hostile powers, and remembering Japan's war dead.
Tenno Heka Banzai.
And then 6
is all I really have to say about that.
Friendship with the world tied together by a spirit of coexistence and mutual prosperity. Building friendly relations with foreign countries through social and cultural exchange programs.
Yes.
Oh wait,
exporting.
Some Nippon Kaijis have believed that, quote, Japan should be applauded for liberating much of East Asia from Western colonial powers. that the 1946 to 1948 Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal were illegitimate, and that killings by Imperial Japanese troops during the 1937 Nanjing Massacre were either exaggerated or fabricated. The group vigorously defends Japan's claim to a territory dispute over the Senkaku Islands with China and denies that the Japanese forced to comfort women during World War II. Nippon Kaigi fights against feminism, LGBT rights, and the 1999 gender equality law.
Yes. The Nippon Kaigi, everybody. The Japanese Tea Party taken to the absolute fucking extreme.
Oh, yeah.
is basically what they are. They're an extremist form of the Tea Party. But the thing is, the scary truth is that their members all make up 75% of the Japanese cabinet, including Shinzo Abe himself.
Yes.
Nippon Kaigi, Japan's rearmament process. They've been working getting a constitutional convention to get rid of Article 9 is kind of difficult because, like in the US, their constitution is like such a core facet of the modern government that they can't reasonably change it without having unanimous strength. So they've been doing little workarounds. So Japan has been forbidden from navally rearming fully for a very, very long time.
Okay, wait, one thing. Only Bro in the chat says that the Japanese Communist Party has been getting a lot of youth vote over the years. Is this true?
Yes. Youth in Japan are much, much, much more liberal and much more
leftist,
left wing than Japanese. If you're over the age of 30 in Japan, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to lean right.
Unless you're a teacher.
Yeah. Because Japan's... to put it in perspective, here's how Japan solved its labor issues. In Japan, post-World War II, there were huge waves of communists in support of a communist government in Japan, as there was all over South, thanks to our good friends in the Soviet Union and the so-called People's Republic of China. So there was a large, trade unions in Japan were fucking enormous, okay, around the 1950s period.
Yeah, there's this thing called the Spring of Cherries, I think it's called, which was a wave of mass protests in two countries in particular, Japan and Germany.
Yeah.
In this year, there was so much student actions that both governments were pretty much convinced that they were going to fall by the end of the year. Riot police was out on the streets 24/7.
Yeah, there's photos of it. Where is it?
I'm very well versed in the German aspect of that thing. Yeah.
1968. So now you see it a lot when you see those pictures of people waving red flags in Japan with white helmets on.
Mm-hmm.
That's those basically those white helmets are sort of FEMA helmets, are like emergency volunteers when people go out and during hurricanes and typhoons and tsunamis. They've got these civil defense areas which have these white helmets. Basically the protesters raided those places, got white helmets, got shields and hoses, and started doing direct battle with the police. Okay?
Yeah.
And that was the communists. Now, prior to that, all through that period, trade unions in Japan had been getting a lot larger, because during the 20s and the 1930s, trade unionists and communists were unabashedly rounded up and executed. They were rounded up and shot. One of the most notable communist authors in Japan was arrested and shot the moment the military junta took power, basically. Now, there is a thing in Japan that the businesses needed to counter this. Now, Japanese culture is very, very different from Western culture to an almost extreme extent. I don't like using racial or cultural profiles very much, but Japan is very much a case of obedience to authority is very ingrained in Japan, as it is in Germany to an extent.
Yeah, but in Germany, it's more of a, it's a lot more of like, in Japan, it's like a sense of, yeah, in Japan, it's like a sort of a sense of duty. You know, you have honor to the nation, to your people, your family. In Germany, it's just, this is what I do. I got to do it proper.
Yeah, in Japan, it's almost on a spiritual level. Obedience to authority is paramount, and so the way they got around this, the way that Japanese businesses got around this, and the way that the Japanese government got around the forming of trade unions and their successive radicalization by communists, businesses like Nissan and Toyota are the two biggest examples. Manufacturing industries formed their own in-house union, as in the Toyota Workers Union, that had members of the board as members. Yeah. And that worked. We now have a trade union that is recognized by the company. Fantastic. Everybody back to work.
Yeah, unions are very...
Yeah.
People are going to tackle people will tackle you for saying this, that unions are so easily fucking co-opted.
They're co-opted if they're not radical enough. I mean, my union, the United Workers Union in Australia, is one of the most radical left-wing unions there are. As I said, I go up to the Change the Rules rally in Australia, and I see signs from the other unions like, we demand fair wages for fair work, we demand this. And then you look at my union, and one of the members of my union's sign has "capital is built in blood" written on it. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm standing with the right union here. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit. And when I get a new job, once I've got past the probationary period and snuck my way in, there's going to be an UWU office and a call center in Adelaide near you. Keep your eyes open. So yeah, while I'm looking for new employment, which is fun, because but back to Japan, trade unions in Japan have almost no power at all, absolutely none. They have the semblance of power, but since the Reaganomics boom in the 1980s, there is to put it in perspective. I know this is a bit of a meme, but in Japanese culture, there is a small. It depends what workplace you're in, of course, but there is a tradition in Japanese culture that you are allowed to sleep at your desk.
Yes.
You are allowed to sleep at your desk or sleep near your workstation in your factory. And the reason for this condition can only be fulfilled after 11 hours of work or something like that, and it's got a bunch of different rules. But it is considered good and honourable for you to sleep at your desk after certain conditions are fulfilled, because it shows your dedication to your craft, and when you wake up, you are ready to attack the new day with new vigour and enthusiasm. They lionize overwork to the point of insanity. And to an even greater extent, in the Japanese animation industry, which is, of course, my thing, exploitation of workers, they are paid at this point on a frame-by-frame basis. So they're paid for each frame completed. Kyoto Animation, the site of the most tragic event in Japanese anime history, was the absolute only animation studio in Japan that actually paid a standard wage with benefits to its workers, which is why they're my favorite animation studio, along with their absolutely beautiful work. But I'll go on a rant that will go for hours, so we won't go there. Suffice to say, Japanese labor relations are, to a Western outsider, especially a Western communist, is absolutely fucked. It's as close to a post-capitalist hellscape as we could possibly imagine it to be. Like, it's terrifying.
Yeah. and it's very heavily normalized over there.
Yeah, and they have one of the most fucking terrible suicide epidemics on the planet.
Youth suicide in Japan is the worst. Mainly because,
one more thing is, do you know how they marketed depression medication in Japan?
I actually know.
Okay, so in my sociology class, we talk about this. In Japan, when depression started to become a prevalent thing, people just wouldn't buy the medication. They were wondering, why is this? So they changed their marketing strategy from, oh, something is wrong, you have like a deep-seated thing, you got this like problem. They changed it from that to marketing medication for depression like you would market cold meds or flu medication. Because the thing is, they don't want these people to perceive it as something innate, because if it's innate, that means they can't change it, and that means it is a bad thing, and they have done something wrong. If it's just a sickness, you can't help it.
Exactly. Japan's culture, like, it's something I admire most about them, but at the same time, it's something that terrifies me. Is the idea that you have a people and a culture so dedicated to the idea of self-perfection, it borders on insanity. Japanese student suicide, like, is fucking ridiculous. In the West, even though a lot of us, in fact, most of us on the left are academics, for the most part, if we score, 70 or 80 on a test, a scoring out of 90 or 100, we're like, I could have probably done a bit better, but we fucking nailed it. We passed with a high above average grade, and we can do better on the next one, right? In Japan, it's a sense of failure and dishonor. I didn't get 98 to 100. What is wrong with me? I'm a failure. I didn't get an A in my class. I'm a failure. I didn't get the highest ATAR or GCSE or SAT score possible. I'm a failure. Yeah. Japanese students I've met them. Like, I met them when they did an exchange with my high school in Australia, and the cultural, like, they looked on our banter with our teachers, because we would banter back and forth with our teachers, telling jokes and making sarcastic observations to our teachers, and giving them shit on occasion. And the Japanese students looked at us in awe, like, what are you doing? Are you mad? It's ridiculous just how regimented and programmed they are from day one, that they will accept nothing less but perfection. So much so that it's, like, Japanese culture in terms of, like, schools and youth culture in particular, it's one of those things where there is I found this out the other day, there is a whole radical subculture of Japanese female students who consider it like a serious rebellious act to wear their skirts maybe 2 inches too short, and their stockings 2 inches too short, and they wear their tie at an odd angle. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like this entire subculture of rebellious behavior. And I sort of look at it compared to the dress style in Western schools, and I'm like, guys, really?
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous.
I mean, in many Japanese schools, it was like a thing where, like, if a kid had like a hair color other than black, even if it was totally natural, they were forced to dye it black.
Yes.
Yeah.
Conformity is absolute, and it's fucking terrifying.
Like,
when you think about it, Japanese culture is pretty much the ideal grooming thing to get people to be okay with living in capitalism.
Oh yeah.
Any failure is your fault. Anything that goes wrong, your fault, and you should be perfect no matter what.
I think this ties into my theory, not wanting to go too weeb on you, but It's my idea as to why Japanese popular culture, such as anime or the kaiju movies of the 1950s, why Japanese popular media is so fucking insane and so high quality compared to, say, Western media, because their artistic creation is literally their only outlet.
Yep,
Like,
and even that they're expected to do expertly.
Yes, like it's the reason why Japanese media and Japanese art has such insanely different things, and why their takes are so radical, why their stuff is so over the top, is because in their day-to-day life they are repressed to the point of insanity. It's just like the reason why Japanese lewd material, to use the polite terminology, is so extreme, and why sexualization in anime is such a big issue, is because I don't think people realize how sexually repressed the main in mainstream society Japan actually is. Sex is for procreation only is the sort of model that Nippon Kaigi is trying to push, as you saw in their policies. It's
the way, Japan conducts itself in that way is it's like if you take the ideal, like, Prussian duty stereotype and you push it to the extreme. Like, modern day Japan is like a dystopian novel about a future Prussia written in Prussia in, like, the 1870s. Is how I would put it.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good way of putting it. Yeah.
The difference is that in the German mindset, let's call it, discipline has a specific point, and what matters are the results. Ultimately, with how much discipline you get there, who cares? That's the main difference. Germans care about results. Don't care how you get there. Just usually you'll do better with discipline. That's the mindset. And that's sort of the difference. In a very honor-based mindset, it where it comes from is everything. If you are not disciplined, might as well quit.
Yeah, it's man, I don't know. I don't even know how they maintain all the work they do. In fact, quite frankly, I think that's why mental health in Japan is just on a steady nosedive. It's why the birth rate's down.
People are so overworked and alienated. Like, how can you even have the energy to maintain a relationship with someone, let alone, settle down and have kids and all that? Like, they're just too fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
There is a trend in Japan. I don't want to sound too on the edge. I don't want to need to put my clown makeup on here, but I will say that there is a subculture in Japan amongst women, which I found out about recently, which is why I think the neckbeards in the West have such an obsession with it in terms of, like, this sort of culture and behavior. There is a subculture in Japan from the female side of things called gaijin hunters. Where women which is a part of national resentment, where a lot of women will actually seek to date Westerners or non-Japanese people, purely because they don't receive the same emotional and physical connection they would need from a Japanese man, due to the societal pressures that they're under. It's the way Japan treats women is dystopian. It's fucking abhorrent. Like, female rights in Japan are ostensibly a thing, but female rights in Japan is basically at 1970s levels. compared to the rest of us. And we still have bad patriarchy as it is now. In Japan, it's borderline. Ooh,
Yeah, like,
women are objects, essentially.
yeah, and that with the emotional connection, it is something very deep seated in like culture. You know, we assume that to us, it's pretty important that we, at least to an extent, enjoy what we do with our life, and that we, have a good life. We're not machines, and that's sort of what gets lost there because of the endless grind of capitalism. And I think it is definitely a sort of semi-feudal ideology. If let me explain on that. In a feudal system, you are subject to your lord, probably a farmer, or you have a craft, and that's your lot in life. That's what you do. That's what you will always do. The difference is, in the feudal era, that was sort of necessity. That you had farmers and dedicated tailors and dedicated blacksmiths and whatnot. And that doesn't mesh well with the daily grind of modern hellscape capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
To accept a lot in your life, which is the first one who just straight up advocated that in the modern era would be Mussolini.
Yep.
Yeah, except I can't explain like Austro-fascist ideology very well in English because it relies on basically it relies on something called Stände, which are different sections of the population, which is the clergy, the nobility, the craftsmen, the peasants, and I think the bankers. And if you were born into that caste, you stay there. So it was a caste system. But it was a silent caste system. And I think that's sort of a similar thing, probably with a bit less emphasis on heredity. But once you get into something, you stay there for the rest of your life. And even if you don't, you dedicate yourself to it as if you would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, accept your situation, peasants. It's the only way.
Yeah. And because what you were saying, art is always very expressive. In like these sort of harsh environments. Like there's a reason a lot of the most famous composers, artists, and writers were German from the 17 and 1800s, because that was one of the harsh places to live in as a member of not the peasants who didn't really get much wind, whose life didn't really change until the Industrial Revolution. If you know what I mean.
Mm.
Like, if your life's like if society around you sucks, you have a lot to say about society. So what better way to express yourself than to try and make some money off of that?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be write a book, or in modern cases, make a movie, make a show, write a book.
Yeah.
And to an extent, there is, a genuine counterculture in Japan ongoing against this, hellscape capitalism. There's no other way to say this. Like, they see the daily reality, and a lot of young people think like, this is kind of fucked up. Like, because this is not what humans are meant to do. Like, humans are not meant to slave themselves to death for 12 hours a day and then drive home for 2 hours and then get 4 hours of sleep and never talk to your peers. That's not what humans are made for.
Eat, sleep, work. Eat, sleep, work.
We're not machines. I think I'd be quoting Dostoevsky when I'm saying that humans humans are not akin to cogs in a wheel. Sometimes we need to roam free.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good quote.
Oh yeah.
Man, what a conversation track that was.
All
Yeah.
right.
God damn.
We've been going on for nearly an hour and a half. I think we can wrap up. We will hopefully have more on Japan next week. Does anybody have anything to plug this week?
That Japanese copyright companies are a fuck, and they ruined my life.
All right. Anything else?
Because I have a video published on YouTube that I'm waiting for them to get back to me about, but they haven't done it yet, and I'm waiting. But yeah, keep an eye out for my channel. There'll be a new video up. There'll be a new video up soon. Eventually.
I'm gonna start streaming games soon, but I don't know much information about what we're gonna do for that. So yeah.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Well.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty,
And you,
Santa, anything interesting?
I don't do anything with my life, really.
Be gay, do crimes. That's my plan.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Be gay, do
That-
crime.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
be gay, do crime.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm doing some research for a possible longer EML video, so be on the lookout.
Ooh.
Yay. Oh, by the way, I also need to put together the EML meetup video, which I might do, seeing as I'm waiting on, because that's gonna be fun. Oh god, that was a fun couple of days.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want me to send you a finished copy on and put it on this channel, or do you want me to put it on mine?
You should see what Eugene and TK say.
Yeah. Well, fellas, that was Evening with Comrades, I suppose.
That was Evening with Comrades. So we'll see you next week at roughly the same time, hopefully. So
I might even have a job by then.
hopefully. I'm
What a
hopefully getting
loser.
paid tomorrow once my professor gets back from